welcome back.
And then my last one that I have is not eating enough, always being in a deficit, and not understanding how that impacted my health.
Hold on,
So
break that down.
not eating enough is truly detrimental to your health, to your hormones, and can hinder your goals, even if your goals are to lose body fat, especially if your goals are to build muscle. I was in a deficit all the time because I thought if I ate, even at maintenance, I would put on weight, or if I didn't eat in a deficit, I wouldn't stay lean. And so for a long time, I would eat at a deficit and my hormones were messed up. I had headaches all the time. I was tired. So for him, it was, I don't sleep. For me, I wasn't eating enough, and I would live off of like 1,600 calories and be so fatigued all the time. And then I started gaining weight because then that's a whole nother podcast, but I wasn't supporting my body with the energy and food that it needed to keep up the function.
Wow.
So then when I started gaining weight, guess what I did? Drop my calories even more. And so not eating enough calories can be severely detrimental, not just to your goals, but to your health overall. And then within those calories, the last thing I forgot to say from my other point was I was eating 0-calorie foods because I'm like, oh, I got to stay in a deficit. So I would eat
That don't even sound right.
Right. Like I would eat like 0 or low calorie, like
food.
very artificial is where I'm getting at, just to stay within my calorie deficit. So then that artificial, all those sweeteners and things like that would make me bloated. So I felt awful. And when I learned that like I need to be in a surplus, and he kind of helped me with that too, where I was never, my glutes would never build. And I'm like, I'm lifting. And then he's like, you're not eating enough.
I was like, you're not going to build glutes with 1,700 calories.
Yes. And so even
no
for,
way.
and that's a whole nother podcast,
Talk to
like
me.
going back to the bodybuilding, that mentality and how it like, anyways.
This is a therapy session,
It's
y'all.
a therapy session, but yeah, like I just thought that if I stayed in a calorie deficit, I would stay lean, and that doesn't work that way. You shouldn't be in a calorie deficit your whole life. You need to be eating at maintenance and sometimes at a surplus depending on your goals.
Yeah.
And what happened when I increased my calories? I lost body fat. I lost body fat. So we get asked a lot of times too, but especially with the nutrition guide in the app, they're like, well, if I go in a surplus, won't I gain weight? Initially, you might. Like, again, it's one of those, it depends. Like, how long were you in a deficit? What is your metabolism like right now? It depends if you'll gain weight. But if you're eating foods that aren't donuts and Oreos for all of your calories, and you're eating good foods that are, if you're in a surplus, you're probably expending a lot of energy in terms of your workouts and your daily activities. So if you're breaking down a lot of muscle and you're in a surplus, majority of that surplus is going to repair, to rebuild, to help you to build that muscle. So you might put on a little weight, but that doesn't mean you're going to gain a ton of body fat.
Yeah.
It's different, right? So keep that in mind if you're someone who's in a deficit, like chronically. That was something that messed me up, and it took me like eating in a surplus for more than just 2 weeks, be in a surplus for some months, and like let your body acclimate to it and watch how your body changes.
Yeah, we made a I don't know if it's a YouTube video. Excuse me. We made a YouTube video or some type of video. Maybe it was on the app, but we talked about, it was like the guides on how to adjust your nutrition to your goals. So if you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to lose body fat, we said, you want to be at a deficit, and we concluded a range from 0 to 500.
Yeah.
The problem with that is people think ultimately, like when they read that nutrition guide, they're like, all right, well, I want to lose weight fast. I'm starting 500. Yeah. Whereas we tell people, like, sometimes you might just want to do a 100 to 200 calorie deficit or even surplus when it comes to if you're trying to put on muscle, and then work your way up. Again, it's trial and error. If you do the maximum, sometimes you're not even understanding like, oh, where do I need to fill in the blanks, because it's so drastic. But when you start with just a 200 calorie or 300 calorie deficit, and then you can say like, oh, I don't. Maybe you might be at a 300 or 400 calorie deficit and you're like, I'm starving.
Yeah.
Like it's different between being hungry and starving
and not eating. Yeah.
right.
Not
Listen
giving
to your body. Your body's starving because you need more. You might need those extra 200 to 300 calories. Start at a 100 calorie deficit and then work your way down as needed. So try not to do the drastic thing. If you're, like she said, if you're at a deficit for a long time, sometimes it can be a detriment to the goals that you're trying to achieve. I've seen people who are at a deficit who gain weight.
Yeah.
You know why?
That was me.
Yes. You know why? Because at some point your body is trying to protect itself, right? If your body is like, I need 2,200, you're only giving me 1,600. I have to put these defense mechanisms in place to make sure that I'm being efficient with these 1,600 calories, which means bloating, which means, a lot of different, bodily processes being thrown out of whack. Tired, right? There's so many offsets to you having that deficit. So if you really just understand, like, all right, let me just start with a 200 calorie deficit or surplus, see how I feel for a week, right? It's trial and error. It's going to take some time. See how I feel. Oh, I felt great this week. Let me try another 100 calories. And then you might get to the next week where you're like, oh man, that was tough. Stay there. And that's okay. You want to do what's going to be efficient for your body and something that you can sustain. If you're struggling every day to eat those 1,700 calories, then you need to up it. It's your body telling, and honestly too, and this is what I learned, I was burnt. Sometimes you may be burning way more than what you think what your TDEE is, right? You might think your TDEE is 2,500. You're eating, right, the 500 calories, you're eating 2,000, but really your TDEE is 2,800. But your body's telling you it's hungry, but you want to protect that deficit and your body's trying to protect you. So just understand, make those small incremental changes and then work your way based on how you feel.
And when it comes to a deficit, definitely start slow because you might find that like 150, 200 calorie deficit you are losing. Yeah. And then you can stay there and you get more food, right? Like you get to eat more versus if you started at 500 and you didn't really need to drop that low. So we love more food.
Correct.
We love more food.
And understand your TDEE is constantly changing as your body composition changes. So understand that. I want to make this point clear too as well. So let's say you lost 30 pounds over the course of 3 months. Congratulations. Like that's a good thing. But you got to understand now your body composition is different, which means your total daily energy expenditure is different. Your metabolism is different, right? All of, like when you first put in those inputs, your height, weight, all that stuff to get that TDEE, right? That weight was a key component of how it computed those numbers. So if you're 30 pounds less, imagine now, if you still want to be at a deficit, that deficit has to change, right? That range changes a little bit as you lose weight. And the same thing if you're gaining weight, right? That TDEE is constantly changing. If we had a magic number that we wanted to hit every day, everything would be perfect. Everybody would be reaching their goals like that. But since that TDEE, I mean, even on the daily, like your body might need 2,600 one day. Your body might need only 2,200 some days, right? It just depends on your activity level and the things that you're doing energy-wise and the foods that you're consuming on a daily
And this is where intuitive eating comes into play and why I personally don't feel like tracking doesn't work long-term for everyone and it's not sustainable because you may not be in a position where you can weigh every single thing, like depending on your job. And also it might mentally not be good for you, right? And so this is where if you can learn and understand like, my body's craving protein or I haven't had enough protein today, I haven't had enough carbs. This is where that comes into play because some days you might be hungrier than others. And if you're tracking your foods and staying in the strict number range, you might not be giving your body what it needs. And so let's say like I had a crazy heavy leg day yesterday. The next day I might be hungry. Like hungry. And then when we were sick, we were literally not moving. I mean, there was one day we tried to go on a walk and we looked like we needed canes. Like we were limping. We were so sick and our bodies were aching so bad. We hardly moved. And I wasn't as hungry. I wasn't burning as much, So
I think I ate one today.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were surviving on like soup and bread, like just like getting something down and like nothing else sounded good. But all of that to say, let's say we were tracking our calories and are forcing ourselves to eat a certain number that day when we may not have needed it. It would have been forceful. And then other days I may have truly needed it and I'm depriving myself of something that I might need to recover or give my muscles what it needs. So this is where intuitive eating kind of comes into play. And once you really understand, like, I'm hungry. I haven't had enough protein today. Protein is satiating. Let me go eat some protein.
Correct.
Or I need some fiber. My digestion has been off. Like really understanding your nutrition and what works for your body. This is where that can be really helpful.
For sure. So we have to hone in on nutrition because, again, we talk about that all the time. Like that's the most important aspect of health and fitness that I think a lot of people need to really grasp. And I think if a lot of people grasp nutrition, I think that will be the biggest thing that kind of help their journey as far as whether you're trying to lose weight or build muscle. Because at the end of the day, we got so many, there's so many different ways to reach your goals. Again, people do follow along workouts. People on our app doing the circuit training. People just follow workouts on TikTok, which there's so many inspirations out there. But at the end of the day, I don't think a lot of people, worry about getting those workouts in. It's the food, right? That's the non-negotiables that people struggle with. So we have to hone in on that a little bit.
And I think if you think of it at the mentality of your nutrition, let that be your fat loss or fat gain, not your workouts. Let your workouts be what sculpts your body, what makes you feel stronger, what builds your muscle, what makes your heart strong, your muscles, let that be your physical, but in terms of like strength and health cardiovascularly and things like that. But when it comes to fat loss, majority of that's going to come from your food.
Correct.
And same thing with fat gain and muscle building. Like that is still going to be important. Obviously with muscle building, it's a little bit different when it comes to the importance of the workouts too. But your nutrition, man, like that is
for sure
key.
It's very key.
Welcome back.